You've been carrying it all day. That low hum beneath everything else, not quite dread, but something close. The sense that what you do for 8 or 10 hours each day is somehow separate from the person you hoped to become. You sit down in the evening and the question sits down with you. Is this what I'm supposed to be doing? And beneath that question, quieter, sharper, am I wasting my life? The breath is still moving, in and out. The body is here, holding you even now. Notice that, the weight of your shoulders, the place where your hands rest. This restlessness about work, about livelihood, about how you spend your waking hours, it lives in the body too. A tightness in the chest, perhaps. A fatigue that sleep doesn't touch. The mind wants an answer, wants a solution, wants to know if it should stay or leave or start over. But first, just this. The breath moving. The body breathing you. There's an old image of a river that divides. Upstream, the water flows as one. Then it meets an obstacle, a stone or a fallen tree, and it splits. Two streams now moving in slightly different directions. Over time, the division becomes familiar. Normal. You forget they were ever one current. This is what happens when we separate our livelihood from our life, when work becomes the thing we do so that we can live later. In the evening, on the weekend, after retirement. The river splits and we spend our days in one stream, our hearts in another. The Buddha spoke of right livelihood as part of the path, not as a side concern, not as something to figure out after you've handled the spiritual parts. He placed it directly in the eightfold way between right action and right effort, as if to say how you sustain yourself matters. The hours you sell, the energy you give, the role you play in the world's endless exchange of labor and need, this shapes you. It shapes your mind. It shapes what you notice and what you ignore. It shapes how you sleep. Right livelihood doesn't mean perfect work. It doesn't mean finding the one career that aligns with every value you hold. The teaching is quieter than that. It begins with a simple question: does this work cause harm? Not in some distant abstract way, but directly, in the doing of it. Does it require you to deceive, to manipulate, to profit from another's suffering or confusion? The Buddha was specific here. He mentioned trade in weapons, in living beings, in meat, in intoxicants, in poison. Not because these were the only harmful trades, but because they were clear examples. Work that feeds on fear, addiction, or violence. Work that requires you to see others as objects to be used. But even when the work itself is harmless, there's another question underneath. Does it ask you to abandon yourself? To perform a version of you that feels hollow? To speak in a voice that isn't yours? To prioritize speed over care, profit over presence, image over truth? This is subtler harm. Harm to your own capacity for awareness. Harm to the thread of integrity that connects your actions to your intentions. You might feel this as a kind of splitting. At work, you are efficient, professional, strategic. At home, you want to be open, present, real. But the mind doesn't switch modes so easily. What you practice for 40 or 50 hours a week becomes your resting state. If you practice urgency, you become urgent. If you practice performance, you become performed. The river divided long enough forgets it was ever whole. Breathe here. Let the breath be simple. Let it move in its own rhythm, not the rhythm of productivity, not the rhythm of achievement. Just breath, just body. The restlessness about work is real. It's pointing to something. But it doesn't need to be solved in this moment. It needs to be felt, acknowledged, given space. Right livelihood isn't only about what you do. It's about how you do it. Whether you bring awareness to the work or let the work hypnotize you. Whether you notice the people around you or see only obstacles and instruments. Whether you pause between tasks or let one urgency bleed into the next. You can be a teacher and cause harm through impatience. You can be a clerk and offer kindness that changes someone's day. The work itself is not separate from the worker, so we begin here. Not with a career change, though that may come. Not with a 5-year plan, though plans have their place. We begin with awareness of what is already happening, the feeling in your body as you prepare for work, the quality of your mind during the hours you labor, the way you speak to yourself about what you do. This is the ground. This is where the practice lives. There is a weight that arrives before the day begins. You open your eyes and already the mind has moved toward what must be done. The body is still resting, but something inside has already started calculating. How much time? What needs finishing? Whether today will be enough. This is not the work itself. This is what we bring to it. The Buddha spoke of right livelihood as one part of the path. He said it simply. Our way of sustaining ourselves should not bring harm to ourselves or to others. Not a grand mission, not a calling that must shake the world. Just this, that the way we move through our days does not leave a trail of suffering behind it. But before we even arrive at the question of harm, there is this other thing. The tightness that forms when we think about work. The sense that we are already late, already lacking, already behind some invisible line we were supposed to cross. A bird gathers twigs for its nest. It does not take more than the tree can spare. It does not return again and again to the same branch until it snaps. The bird works, but it does not carry the tree's burden. It takes what it needs, and the tree continues. We do not always work this way. Sometimes we approach our livelihood as if we must extract everything from it at once. Meaning, security, identity, proof of worth. We ask it to tell us who we are. We ask it to justify the hours we give. And when it does not answer all of this, we feel the gap as failure. The tension is not always about the work itself. Sometimes it is about what we have layered on top of it. You can begin to see this in the morning. Before you rise, before you move, there is a thought. It might be about a meeting, a message you need to send, a problem that did not resolve yesterday. The thought arrives and the body responds. The breath shortens. The shoulders pull in slightly. The mind starts building a story about how the day will go. This is where you can notice. Not to stop the thought, not to replace it with something better, just to see that it has arrived, that it carries a texture, that the body has already begun to brace. Right livelihood begins here. Not in choosing the perfect job, not in finding work that feels noble or aligned with some higher purpose. It begins in seeing how we meet the fact of work at all. The bird does not question whether gathering twigs is meaningful. It does not wonder if this is the right tree or if another bird has a better method. It gathers what it needs. The action is clean. We complicate this. We add layers of interpretation. We compare. We replay yesterday's mistakes. We rehearse conversations that have not happened. And all of this happens before we have even begun. The teaching is not asking you to love your work. It is not asking you to feel grateful or inspired. It is asking you to notice whether harm is being created. Harm to others through what you do. Harm to yourself through how you do it. If you wake and the first thought about work feels like a stone in the chest, that is information. Not a problem to solve immediately, just something true. You do not need to change jobs in that moment. You do not need to fix anything. You can simply let the awareness be there. This is what it feels like right now. This is the shape of the tension. Sometimes the harm is obvious. The work itself asks you to deceive or manipulate or ignore suffering. But more often, the harm is quieter. It is in the way you push past tiredness. The way you carry the weight of it into every other part of your life. The way you forget that work is one activity among many, not the center around which everything else must bend. The bird returns to the tree many times, but it also flies elsewhere. It rests, it sings. The nest is important, but it is not the only thing. When you notice the first thought about work in the morning, you are not trying to make it go away. You are learning to see it as one thread in a larger weave. Work is part of how you move through the world. It is not the whole world. This recognition is subtle. It does not arrive with fanfare. But once you begin to sense it, the grip loosens slightly. The day still holds what it holds. But you are not carrying tomorrow and yesterday at the same time. Right livelihood is not a destination. It is a quality of attention. You bring it to the moment when the thought arises. You bring it to the choice of what to say or withhold. You bring it to the end of the day when you set the work down. The tree does not collapse when the bird takes a twig. It continues, and the bird does not take more than it needs. This is the rhythm. Work and rest, effort and release. One part of a day that also holds sky and stillness and the sound of your own breathing. We think of livelihood as something we do alone. We earn, we produce, we trade our hours for money and the money for what we need. The transaction feels clean, separate, but it was never separate. Rain falls on soil and the soil feeds roots. The rain does not negotiate, the soil does not invoice. The exchange happens because conditions meet. In the early tradition, monks walked through villages at dawn with empty bowls. They did not ask, they simply stood. Householders came out and placed food in the bowls, sometimes rice, sometimes fruit, sometimes a small portion of what they themselves would eat that day. The monk received this not as payment for services rendered, not as charity that diminishes the giver, but as part of the web of giving. The householder gave food. The monk gave the opportunity to practice generosity. The monk gave teachings. The householder gave shelter to the teachings by listening. Nothing was owed. Everything was offered. We have mostly lost this way of seeing. We see our work as ours. We see our paycheck as earned, deserved, separate from the hands that built the systems we rely on. We forget the truck driver who brought groceries to the store. We forget the person who assembled the chair we sit in. We forget the teacher who first showed us how to read. We act as if we are self-made, as if livelihood is a private matter between us and our effort. But look closer. The software engineer writes code, yes, but she learned language from parents who fed her. She learned patience from a teacher she no longer remembers. She uses electricity generated by workers she will never meet. She drinks water cleaned by infrastructure built decades ago. Her livelihood is not hers alone. It is rain falling on soil, and the soil is every condition that made this moment possible. The web becomes visible when we stop to name it. One thing received, one thing given, not as an accounting exercise, but as a way of seeing what was always true. Today you received breath. You did not earn it. The air was simply there. You received the road that brought you to work. You did not pave it. Someone else did, maybe years before you were born. You received the patience of a co-worker who explained something twice. You did not pay them extra for that patience. They simply offered it. And you gave. Maybe you held a door. Maybe you answered a question. Maybe you completed a task that someone else will rely on tomorrow, someone whose name you do not know. The giving does not need to be grand. It only needs to be seen. Rain does not fall grandly. It falls steadily, without announcement, and the roots drink. When we name one thing received and one thing given, we are not practicing gratitude in the way greeting cards mean it. We are practicing sight. We are learning to see that livelihood is not extraction. It is participation. The monk's bowl is empty until the householder fills it. The householder's generosity is dormant until the monk receives it. Neither is complete without the other. The exchange is not a transaction. It is a meeting. This changes how we move through work. Not the work itself necessarily, but how we hold it. We stop performing self-sufficiency. We stop pretending we owe nothing and are owed everything. We see the carpenter who built the desk. We see the janitor who empties the trash. We see the person who answered the phone when we called with a question. They are not background. They are the soil. And we see ourselves as part of the soil for others. The email we send might be the one piece of information someone needed. The smile we offer might be the first kindness someone received today. We do not know. We do not need to know. Rain falls without knowing which seed it will wake. Right livelihood, then, is not only about avoiding harm. It is about recognizing that harm and help both ripple outward through the web. When we forget the web, we take without seeing. We give without knowing. We move through our days as if we are separate, and that forgetting makes us small, defensive, always calculating. But when we name what we received and what we gave, even once, even quietly, the web becomes visible. Not as an idea, as a fact. The reciprocity was always there. We are only learning to see it. And once seen, it does not demand anything. It simply is. Rain falls, soil receives, roots drink, and somewhere, in time, a tree stands. The hands know before the mind catches up. When you knead dough, there is a moment when the flour and water stop being separate things. The mixture goes from shaggy to smooth. Your palms press down and the dough resists, then yields. You fold it over itself. You press again. The rhythm is older than thinking. Most of us have lost this, not because we stopped working, but because the work moved away from our hands. We type, and the words appear elsewhere. We click and the transaction completes in a server we will never see. The effort is real, but it has become abstract. The body is still here, but we have stopped noticing what it does. There is an old Zen saying, chop wood, carry water. Before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. It sounds like nothing changes. That is the point. The work was always just the work. What changes is whether you are present for it. Right livelihood is usually taught as a question of ethics. Do not harm, do not deceive, do not trade in weapons or intoxicants. These guidelines matter. But there is something quieter underneath them. The question is not only what you do, but whether you are awake while you do it. You can have the most harmless job in the world and still be absent from your own hands. When the work becomes abstract, meaning drains out of it. Not because the work itself is meaningless, but because you are no longer in contact with it. You think about the outcome. You think about what comes next. You think about whether it is enough. The task in front of you becomes an obstacle between here and somewhere else. The body performs, but no one is home. Kneading dough teaches you something if you stay with it long enough. At first, your hands are just following instructions. Add flour. Knead for 10 minutes. But if you keep going, something shifts. You stop counting minutes. You start feeling the dough change under your palms. It gets warmer. It starts to push back with a kind of life. Your hands adjust without being told. They know when to add flour, when to rest, when to press harder. This is not magic. This is what happens when you let the body do what it knows how to do. The same thing is available in any work. Washing a dish, sweeping a floor, answering an email. The mind wants to race ahead or drift back. The hands are always here. They touch the water. They feel the weight of the broom. They press the keys. If you bring your attention down into them, the work stops being a problem to solve. It becomes a series of sensations. Try this with one task today. It does not have to be special. Pick something small, something you do with your hands. As you do it, notice the temperature. Is it warm or cool? Notice the pressure. Where do your fingers press? Where do they relax? You do not have to change anything. You do not have to do it better. Just feel what is already happening. This is not about finding joy in every task. Some work is hard, some work is boring, but even hard, boring work has texture. The hands get tired, the shoulders tense, the breath shortens. These are not problems to fix. They are the reality of the work. When you feel them, you are no longer separate from what you're doing. The gap closes. Chopping wood is just chopping wood. Carrying water is just carrying water. The enlightenment, if we can call it that, is not somewhere else. It is in the thud of the axe. It is in the weight of the bucket. It is in the fact that you are here, doing this, and you know it. Most work will not feel like kneading dough. It will not become elastic and alive under your hands. But your hands are still alive. They are still warm. They still press and release and adjust. If you bring your attention there, even for a moment, the work becomes real again. Not meaningful in some grand sense, just real, just here. The body is where the work happens, not the idea of the work, not the story about the work, the actual effort, the actual contact. When you return to your hands, you return to the first site of labor. Everything else is commentary. The hands are the place where you meet the world. There is a difference between knowing something is wrong and being willing to feel it. Most of us spend years walking around in a shoe that pinches with every step, adjusting our gait, telling ourselves it will break in eventually, that discomfort is just part of the deal. We learn to ignore the pressure. We tell ourselves everyone's shoe pinches a little, but the body knows. The body keeps a record that the mind tries to erase. The Buddha spoke plainly about livelihood. He said to avoid work that trades in harm, weapons that wound, intoxicants that cloud, the buying and selling of living beings, poison, deceit. These were not abstract categories, they were the trades of his time. He named them because people asked. They wanted to know if their work was compatible with the path. He did not moralize. He simply pointed to what creates suffering and what does not. We might think this does not apply to us. We do not sell weapons or trade in slaves, but the principle underneath is still breathing. It asks, does this work require me to participate in harm? Does it ask me to look away from what I know? Does it depend on someone else's confusion or desperation? These are not easy questions, and the answers are not always clear. But the pinch is. You feel it on Sunday evening. You feel it in the parking lot before you go inside. You feel it in the language you have to use, the things you are asked not to say, the corner you are expected to cut because everyone cuts it. You feel it when you come home and cannot quite meet your own eyes in the mirror. This is aversion, not the loud kind that makes you quit in anger, the quiet kind, the one that lives under the surface and slowly drains the color from everything. Aversion does not always announce itself. It can feel like tiredness, like numbness, like the sense that you are performing a role in a play you did not audition for. You might not even call it dissatisfaction. You might just notice that your chest feels tight when you think about Monday, that you need a drink to transition out of work mode, that you have started counting years until retirement even though you are only 35. The instinct is to solve it, to update the resume, to research new careers, to imagine a version of life where the shoe fits perfectly and every step feels light. But this is where we often go too fast. We leap from discomfort to solution without pausing in the middle, without actually sitting with the question. The practice here is not to fix anything, not yet. The practice is to stop adjusting your gait, to stop pretending the pinch is not there, to sit down, take off the shoe, and look at what is happening. This means feeling the aversion without immediately strategizing your way out of it. It means noticing the tightness in your chest and not filling the space with plans. It means letting the discomfort be discomfort, not guilt, Not shame, not proof that you are ungrateful or weak, just discomfort, a signal, a piece of information your body has been trying to give you. You do not have to know what comes next. You do not have to have a better job lined up. You do not even have to know if leaving is the right move. You just have to stop lying to yourself about whether the shoe pinches. Sit with it, in the morning or at night or during lunch. Find 5 minutes where you are not solving or planning, just feeling. What does the aversion feel like in your body? Where does it live? Is it sharp or dull? Does it move or stay in one place? Does it get louder when you let yourself notice it, or does it settle? You are not looking for an answer. You are looking for clarity. And clarity does not come from thinking harder. It comes from feeling accurately. The Buddha was not interested in making people feel bad about their work. He was interested in helping them see clearly. Because when you see clearly, you can choose clearly. But if you are too busy defending the shoe, too busy explaining why it is fine, too busy comparing your pinch to someone else's blister, you cannot see anything at all. The question is not whether your work is noble or meaningful by someone else's standard. The question is whether it asks you to betray what you know, whether it requires you to numb yourself just to get through the day, whether the life it funds is worth the life it costs. And you do not answer that question by thinking about it. You answer it by sitting still long enough to feel what is already true. The shoe either pinches or it does not. Your body already knows. The only question is whether you are willing to stop walking long enough to listen. The work we do to keep ourselves alive often feels like a long corridor with no windows. We move through it quickly because stopping means noticing how tired we are. We answer emails while eating lunch. We scroll through news while waiting for water to boil. We plan tomorrow while driving home today. The mind learns to run from one task into the next without pause, and after years of this, we forget that the pause was ever there. Right livelihood is usually taught as choosing work that doesn't harm. This is true and necessary. But there is another dimension that lives inside the how, not just the what. It is possible to do harmless work in a way that harms yourself. When every transition is filled, when every gap is plugged with sound or information or the next urgent thing, the nervous system never lands, the body stays braced, the breath stays shallow. And the work itself, no matter how meaningful, becomes another weight. In music, the rest between notes is not empty time. It is what lets the melody breathe. Without it, sound becomes noise. The silence is not absence. It is structure. It holds the music in place so the ear can follow. When we remove those spaces, we lose the shape of the song entirely. You might notice this when someone speaks without pausing. The words pile up, and after a while you stop hearing them. The meaning dissolves because there is no room for it to land. The same thing happens inside us. Thought after thought, task after task, with no rest between. Eventually, we are no longer working, we are only continuing. The Zen teachers say the space between breaths is where the mind rests, not after the exhale is finished, not when the day is over, right there in the brief gap before the next inhale begins. It is so short, we usually miss it. But it is there. And in that sliver of stillness, the mind is not doing anything. It is not holding or pushing or planning. It is simply open. This is not about adding a meditation practice on top of an already full day. It is about noticing that the day is made of transitions. You finish writing an email and open a new tab. You end a meeting and start walking to the next one. You close your laptop and pick up your phone. These are hinges. And right now they swing so fast, there is no gap at all. What if you took 3 breaths before switching tasks? Not as a ritual, not as productivity advice, just as a way of letting one thing finish before the next thing starts. You close the document, you feel your hands on the keyboard, you breathe in, you breathe out, you breathe in again, then you move. At first this might feel inefficient. The mind will say there is no time. But the truth is that those 3 breaths take less than 20 seconds. What they do is interrupt the automaticity. They create a seam. And in that seam, the nervous system has a chance to reset. The breath deepens slightly. The shoulders drop half an inch. The next task is met with a little more presence instead of the momentum of the last one. This is not about being calm all the time. It is about remembering that you are a body, not a machine. Machines can run continuously. Bodies cannot. Even if the work is important, even if it feeds something meaningful, the way you move through it matters. A life spent racing from task to task, no matter how noble the tasks, is still a life lived in a state of emergency. The rest between notes does not make the music slower, it makes the music possible. Without it, there is only sound happening, one tone colliding into the next. With it, there is rhythm, phrasing, something the listener can follow. Your day has the same structure. The work you do can have melody, or it can be noise. The difference is not in what you do, it is in whether you let the spaces remain. You begin to notice that the gap is not empty, it is full of something quieter. The breath moves, the room has a temperature, the body is standing or sitting. These are not distractions from the work, they are the ground the work happens on. When you skip over them, you lose your footing. When you return to them, even briefly, the mind knows where it is again. Silence stops feeling like a void. It starts feeling like rest. Not the rest that comes after everything is finished, the rest that makes finishing possible. You have probably imagined it. The job that would finally feel right, the work that would make the mornings easier, the evenings lighter. You picture yourself in that role and something in you relaxes. Once I have that, you think, I will be okay. This is not foolishness. This is the shape craving takes when it touches livelihood. You walk toward the horizon and it moves. You walk faster and it moves again. The line between earth and sky stays exactly the same distance away. This is not because you are slow. This is because the horizon is not a place. It is a relationship between where you stand and what you see. Right livelihood is often taught as a list. Do not deal in weapons. Do not trade in intoxicants. Do not harm living beings for profit. These are useful boundaries, but they are not the deepest teaching. The deepest teaching is about what you are looking for when you look for work. You might be looking for safety. You might be looking for respect. You might be looking for proof that you matter. These are not wrong desires. But when you place them entirely in the hands of a job, you are asking the horizon to come to you. The Mahayana teachings say that samsara and nirvana are not 2 places. They are 2 ways of seeing. Samsara is the world seen through craving. Nibbana is the same world seen without it. You do not need to go somewhere else. You need to see where you are differently. When you think about the job you want, notice what you believe it will give you. Not the salary, not the title, the feeling underneath. The sense that you will finally be enough. That you will finally be safe. That you will finally be seen. This is the craving. It is not about the job. It is about what you think the job will end. You can notice this right now. When you imagine the work you want, what tightness appears in your chest? What hope? What fear? The noticing does not make it go away, but it shows you what is actually happening. You are not looking for work. You are looking for relief from craving. This does not mean you should not want good work. It does not mean you should settle for harm or exhaustion. It means that even good work will not complete you. Even meaningful work will not end the craving. Because craving is not a problem that gets solved, it is a pattern that gets seen. The horizon moves because you are the one creating it. Your eye and the edge of the earth make the line together. When you understand this, you do not stop walking. but you stop believing that the next hill will be different. Right livelihood, then, is not about finding the perfect job. It is about working without asking work to save you. You can stock shelves without needing the shelves to prove your worth. You can answer phones without needing the calls to make you whole. You can build or teach or heal without demanding that the work finally make you okay. This is not resignation. This is clarity. You might notice the thought arising, once I have this job, then I will be okay. It might come when you scroll through listings. It might come in an interview. It might come on a Sunday night when the week ahead feels unbearable. The thought is not the problem, the believing is. When the thought comes, you can feel where it lives in your body, the tightness in your throat, the heat in your face, the weight in your belly. You do not need to argue with it. You do not need to shame yourself for wanting. You only need to see that this is craving. This is the mind reaching for the horizon. The teaching does not ask you to stop wanting good work. It asks you to see what you are actually wanting. You want the craving to stop. You want the sense of incompleteness to end. And you have learned to believe that the right livelihood will do this. But livelihood cannot do this. Only seeing can. Samsara is not your job. Samsara is the belief that your job will complete you. Nirvana is not unemployment. Nirvana is working without that belief. Same hands, same tasks, different way of seeing. You do not need to wait until you find the perfect work to practice this. You can practice it now, in the work you have. Notice when you're working to escape the feeling of not enough. Notice when you are working to prove something. Notice when you are working because the work itself asks to be done. These are different. You can feel the difference. The craving will come again. It is a pattern, not a personal failure. The horizon will appear again, and you will walk toward it. But each time you see it as a pattern, the grip loosens. Not because you have defeated it, because you have stopped believing it. You sit at your desk and imagine quitting. The fantasy is detailed. You see yourself walking out, starting over, doing work that matters. The vision feels pure, distant, and completely still. Nothing in your body moves toward it. This is where most of us live when we think about right livelihood. We picture the final form. We wait for the courage to leap. We tell ourselves that small adjustments don't count, that real change means total reinvention. And while we wait, we stay exactly where we are, growing quieter inside. The Buddha taught a path of gradual training, gradual practice, gradual progress. Not because sudden shifts never happen, but because most of us cannot sustain what we have not prepared for. The mind that leaps without training lands hard. The life that changes all at once often changes back. When you adjust the tiller of a boat by inches, the bow doesn't swing dramatically. The water doesn't churn. But over time, the boat is facing a different horizon. The adjustment is so slight that someone standing on the deck might not feel it. Yet the destination has changed. Right livelihood is not about finding the perfect job. It is about bringing awareness to how you sustain yourself. It asks you to notice where your work creates harm and where it creates care. It invites you to see the distance between what you do for 8 hours and what you believe when you are still. The teaching does not say you must quit tomorrow. It does not say your work must save the world. It says, look clearly at what you are participating in. Notice what it asks of you. Notice what it asks you to ignore. Most people, when they begin to look, feel overwhelmed. The whole structure seems wrong. The compromise seems total. And so they look away again, because if they cannot fix everything, they believe they should fix nothing. But the tiller moves by inches. You do not need to redesign the boat. You need to notice where your hand is and whether it is pushing in a direction you can live with. This week, you might choose one small boundary to set at work. not a revolution, not a resignation letter, a boundary. Maybe you stop checking email after 8 in the evening. Maybe you say no to one meeting that has nothing to do with your actual responsibilities. Maybe you stop pretending to agree when someone speaks in a way that makes your chest tighten. The boundary does not have to be bold. It does not have to announce itself. It only has to be true. When you set a small boundary, you're not fixing your livelihood. You are practicing honesty in a place where honesty is rare. You are learning what it feels like to stop drifting and to place your hand on the tiller, even slightly, even for a moment. The practice is not about the boundary itself. It is about the capacity to notice what is happening and to respond with intention instead of momentum. Most of us spend years in jobs we have not chosen in any real sense. We accepted an offer, and then we accepted the next thing and the next, until we cannot remember the last time we decided something about our work instead of letting it decide us. The tiller does not move itself, and if you wait until you have the perfect coordinates, the perfect wind, the perfect crew, you will drift until the water runs out. What the Buddha pointed to is simpler. You can begin where you are. You can make one choice that reflects what you actually value. The choice does not have to solve everything. It only has to be honest. When you stop waiting for transformation and start adjusting the tiller, something shifts. Not in your job title, not in your income, but in your relationship to the hours you spend working. You begin to feel that you are participating in your life instead of enduring it. The boundary you set this week might seem small to anyone watching, but you will feel it. You will feel the difference between drifting and steering, and that feeling, over time, becomes a kind of compass. Right livelihood is not a destination, it is a direction. And direction is determined by small adjustments made consistently, not by fantasies of total change that never leave the mind. The boat is already moving. The question is whether your hand is on the tiller. The day ends, but the work does not. You close the laptop or set down the tools or walk out the door, and still the list follows. The email you didn't send. The call you meant to make. The task half finished, waiting like a question you cannot answer. This is the incompleteness we carry. It moves with us from the desk to the table, from the table to the bed. We lie down, but we do not arrive. The body rests, but the mind is still reaching back toward what was left undone. The Buddha taught that all conditioned things are impermanent. Work arises and passes. It comes into being because conditions bring it forth. It falls away when those conditions change. A task appears because someone needs something, because a deadline was set, because you agreed to it, or because circumstance required it. And then it moves through time, and either it is completed or it is not. And then another task arises. The river flows whether you watch it or not. It does not stop because you turned away. It does not wait for you to finish counting the stones on the bottom before it continues downstream. The current moves, and the water that was here a moment ago is already gone, and new water has taken its place. Work is like this. It flows. You step into it each day, and you do what you can do, and then the day ends, and the river is still moving. There will be more water tomorrow. There will be more tasks tomorrow. The incompleteness you feel is not a flaw in you. It is the nature of conditioned things. They do not complete themselves according to your preference. They arise, they change, they pass. But we do not see it this way. We see the undone work as a failure of effort, a gap in our worth, a reason we cannot rest. We believe that rest must be earned by completion, that peace comes only after everything is handled. And so we carry the weight forward, and the weight grows heavier because the river does not stop, and there is always something more. Right livelihood is not only about what work you choose, it is also about how you hold the work. Whether you can meet it without clinging, whether you can set it down when the day is done. At the end of the day, before you turn away from your work, try this. Name 3 things left undone. Say them quietly, either aloud or inside. The email, the errand, the project that will wait until tomorrow. Do not name them to shame yourself. Do not name them to make a plan. Name them simply to see them, to acknowledge that they are there, that they are unfinished, and that this is how things are. Then let them be. Not forever, not as abandonment, just for now. Let them remain undone while you step away. The river flows whether you watch it or not, and the work will still be there tomorrow, and you do not need to hold it through the night. This is not easy. The mind will want to return. It will say that naming is not enough, that you must solve, that you must plan, that rest is only permitted after completion. Notice this. Notice how the mind reaches back. And notice that you can choose not to follow. The practice is not about finishing everything. It is about seeing impermanence clearly. Work arises and passes. The conditions that brought today's task into being will change. Some tasks will be completed, others will dissolve on their own because circumstances shifted, others will remain, and you will meet them again when you return. You do not have to carry them while you rest. You can set them down the way you set down a bag when you arrive home. The bag does not disappear, it is still there. But your hands are free, and your shoulders are light, and you can move through the evening without the weight. This is what it means to close the day without clinging to completion, not to pretend the work does not exist, not to ignore what needs doing, but to see that the river flows and you cannot hold the water, and rest is not something you earn by stopping the current. Rest is what happens when you stop trying to hold what cannot be held. Name 3 things, let them be. And then turn toward the evening as it is, without the list, without the weight, without the belief that you are incomplete, because the work is incomplete. You are not the work. The work arises and passes. You remain breathing here. You have worked all day and you sit down in the evening, but the body does not soften. Something in you is still tallying, still adding up what you did and whether it was enough. The chair holds you, but you do not let yourself be held. This is the shape the mind takes when it believes rest must be purchased. A cat finds a square of sunlight on the floor and folds into it. There is no negotiation, no list of tasks completed, no inner voice asking if the cat has done enough to deserve this warmth. The body meets the light and settles. This is not laziness. This is not indulgence. It is simply what happens when a living thing recognizes conditions that allow rest. We have learned a different way. We have learned that rest is the reward for productivity, that stillness must be justified, that lying down without exhaustion is a kind of theft from the hours we owe to effort. And so we carry a ledger in the chest. Even when the work is done, we are checking it, reviewing, wondering if we did enough, gave enough, proved enough. The body wants to let go, but the mind says not yet. Right livelihood is often spoken of as choosing work that does not harm. This is true, but there is another layer beneath it. Right livelihood also asks, can you allow yourself to be sustained without constantly earning the right to exist? The old Zen line says it plainly. Sitting quietly, doing nothing, spring comes, and the grass grows by itself. The grass does not labor to grow. It does not stay awake at night wondering if it has grown enough to justify the rain. The conditions arrive and growth happens, rest happens, life continues. But we have been taught to distrust this, to see it as passivity or entitlement. We have been taught that our worth is measured by output, and so we measure ourselves the same way. The day ends, but the measuring does not. You might notice this in the body. The way the shoulders stay lifted even when you are lying down. The way the breath remains shallow, as if you are still preparing for the next task. The way the mind flickers toward tomorrow's list, even as you try to close your eyes. This is not a moral failure. It is simply what happens when we have internalized a transaction. rest for work, ease for effort, permission for proof. Equanimity is sometimes misunderstood as detachment, as if it means caring less, feeling less, wanting less. But equanimity is not numbness, it is balance. It is the capacity to meet what arises without needing to control it, without needing to justify it, without needing to add or subtract from it. When you sit down to rest and the mind says you have not earned it, equanimity does not argue. It does not try to convince you that you have worked hard enough. It simply notices the thought, notices the tightness in the chest, notices the habit of measuring, and then it lets the body rest anyway. The cat does not ask permission. The grass does not wait for approval. They meet the conditions and respond. This is not because they are enlightened. It is because they have not learned to doubt their own existence. Somewhere in you, beneath the ledger and the measuring, there is a body that knows how to rest. It has always known, but it has been waiting for permission that never comes, because the terms keep changing. Enough is never enough when worth is conditional. You could sit for 5 minutes, not to meditate in the formal sense, not to fix anything or improve anything, just to sit without purpose, without checking the time to see if you have sat long enough, without planning what you will do afterward to make up for this stillness, just the body in the chair. The breath moving in and out, the sounds in the room or outside the window. No goal, no destination, no productivity. This might feel uncomfortable. The mind may rush in with reasons why this is wasteful. It may offer a compromise. Sit, but also plan, or sit, but also listen to something useful. It may tell you that 5 minutes of purposeless sitting is fine for people who have already done enough, but you are not one of those people. Notice that voice, not to argue with it, not to shame it, just to hear it clearly, because beneath that voice is the belief that your existence is conditional, that you must continually earn the right to take up space, to breathe easily, to let the body soften. The cat in the sunlight does not believe this. The grass in spring does not believe this. They are here, and that is enough. The conditions allow them, and they unfold. When you sit without purpose, you are not practicing laziness. You are practicing the recognition that you are already part of the conditions, already held, already allowed. Rest is not a reward. It is not something you receive after proving yourself. It is what remains when you stop adding requirements to your own existence. Spring comes, the grass grows, you are already here. You wake, you dress, you go to work. And somewhere in the rhythm of that routine, you might feel alone in it, as if the effort were yours to carry, the meaning yours to make, the outcome, something measured only by what you bring home at the end of the day. But beneath the forest floor, there is mycelium, thread-like filaments that stretch through the dark soil, connecting root to root, tree to tree. A single network that feeds what it touches, carries nutrients across distances you would never see from above. The trees do not know the whole map. They only receive what comes and offer what they can. Your work is like this, not separate, not solo. Part of a web so vast that most of it remains invisible to you. The Mahayana tradition teaches that all beings are interconnected, not as metaphor, as fact, because nothing arises alone. Your work touches the whole, even when you cannot see how. The food you prepare, the code you write, the floor you clean, the child you teach, it moves outward. Someone else's day shifts because of what you did, and your day was shaped by 100 hands you never saw. Right livelihood in the Buddhist sense is not only about avoiding harm, it is about remembering that you are embedded, that the way you sustain yourself sustains others, and that others sustain you in return. When you forget this, work becomes heavy. It becomes a task you perform in isolation, a burden you shoulder without support. You start to measure your worth by output, by recognition, by whether you feel you have done enough. But the mycelium does not ask if it has done enough. It simply continues, feeding what needs feeding, drawing from what offers itself. You might try this, just once, today or tomorrow. Reflect on one person whose work made your day possible, not in a grand way, in a small, specific way. The person who drove the bus, the one who stocked the shelf, the one who answered the phone or wrote the instructions or kept the server running while you slept. You do not need to know their name. You only need to notice that they were there. And when you notice, something shifts. The isolation loosens. You see that you have been held all along, not by your own effort, by a network of effort, quiet and mostly unseen, that runs beneath everything you do. This is not sentimentality. It is perception. When you look clearly, you see that your livelihood is not separate from the livelihood of others. The cashier at the grocery store is part of the system that feeds you. The engineer who designed the water treatment plant is part of what keeps you alive. You did not build your life alone. You are walking on a structure made by millions of people, most of whom you will never meet. And your work, whatever it is part of that same structure for someone else. The mycelium does not hoard. It does not withhold nutrients from one tree to favor another. It moves resources where they are needed in response to what arises. And the forest, because of this, remains alive. Not because each tree is strong on its own, because they are connected. When you see your work this way, it becomes lighter. Not because the tasks change, but because the story changes. You are not performing in isolation. You are participating in something larger. And that participation has meaning, not because someone told you it does, but because you can feel the threads that connect you to what came before and what will come after. You do not need to see the whole network. You only need to sense that it is there, that when you do your work with care, that care moves outward. And when someone else does their work with care, it reaches you. This is compassion in action, not as a feeling you must generate, but as a fact you notice. You are held by the efforts of others, and others are held by yours. The forest does not grow because one tree tries harder. It grows because the mycelium connects them. Because what one tree cannot reach alone, the network provides. You are part of that network. Right now, whether you feel it or not, your work is already feeding something you cannot see, and you are already being fed by work you did not do. When you rest in this, the weight changes. You are not alone in your effort. You never were. The question of livelihood never fully resolves. It shifts as circumstances shift. A choice that felt aligned last year may feel strained now. Work that once drained you might reveal new texture after your relationship to it changes. This is not failure. This is the nature of a living practice. You do not need to have it all figured out. The path does not ask for perfection. It asks for attention, for honesty about what is actually happening, not what should be happening. When you notice tension in your work, that noticing is the practice. When you feel the pull to cut corners or the weight of compromise, feeling that pull is where the path begins. Some days the work will feel clear. Other days it will feel like you are moving through fog. Both are workable. Both are part of the territory. The clarity is not in having all the answers. It is in staying present to the questions as they arise. Right livelihood is not a destination you arrive at and then rest. It is a quality of presence you bring to the hours of your day. It lives in the small choices, the tone you use when speaking to a colleague, the care you take with a task no one will notice, the moment you pause before reacting out of frustration or fear. These are not minor details. They are the substance of a life. You may not be able to change your job tomorrow. You may be bound by responsibilities, by debts, by the needs of those who depend on you. The practice does not require you to abandon everything. It invites you to work with what is here, to find the points of leverage within the constraints, to ask what is possible now, in this situation, with these conditions. Sometimes the most honest thing is to stay and transform your relationship to the work. Sometimes the most honest thing is to plan a careful exit. Only you can know which is true. But you will know by listening, not by forcing. By observing the quality of your mind over time, not by chasing a feeling. The breath has been with you through all of this, through every job, every decision, every moment of doubt. It has asked nothing of you. It has simply continued, in and out, rising and falling. When the questions about livelihood feel too large, you can return here, to this breath, to this body, sitting or standing or moving through space. Feel the weight of your body right now, the pressure where it meets the surface beneath you, the temperature of the air on your skin. These sensations do not depend on your job title. They do not change because your work feels meaningful or meaningless. They are simply here, constant, available. The concepts we have explored, they have their place. They can guide and clarify. But in the end, they are just concepts. The living truth is closer than thought. It is in the texture of this moment, the quiet hum of being alive, earning or not earning, succeeding or failing, figuring it out or still searching. Let the ideas settle. Let them become background. What remains is just this: breath moving, heart beating, the simple fact of presence. If you are lying down, feel the rise and fall of your chest. If you are sitting, notice the small movements of your abdomen. There is no need to control it. No need to make it deeper or slower. Just let it be as it is. The work you do tomorrow will come. The questions will return. But for now, they can rest. For now, there is only this breath, this body, this moment, complete as it is. When you are ready, you might explore another reflection in this series, or you might simply stay here a while longer. Either way, the path continues. Quiet, patient, always available, just breathing, just this.